Then I decided to head back
Yep.
to KPMG, which is kantor papa mama gue.
As a what?
When I started Bibit itu, I was actually a victim of a Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
This was back in like maybe 2012, 2013. Jadi gue bener-bener setelah jadi victim itu,
Yeah.
my motivation tuh gue nggak pengen orang itu ngerasain apa yang gue rasain.
Okay.
Gue pengen itu orang itu ngerti kayak misalkan investment itu apa, what's the right way to invest, dan becoming a trusted platform.
Yep.
I think great startups itu justru harus mulainya itu ketika fundingnya seret. Iya, karena ketika lu bener-bener di funding, itu is a validation of yourself.
Halo Nalar People, balik lagi sama gua Ray. Kali ini gua kedatangan seorang tamu spesial dari Skystar Capital. Please everyone welcome Juve.
Thank
Welcome,
you bro
bro.
for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
No, gua yang thank you. Lu udah mau datang ke sini buat sharing nih ya.
It's my honor, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bro, gue pengen ngobrol dong tentang latar belakang lu dulu nih. Lu punya background tuh menurut gue sangat interesting ya. Dulunya founder dan sekarang udah di posisi yang sebelahnya gitu kan, sebagai divisi sekarang lu work. Boleh dong ceritain latar belakang lu kayak gimana?
Paling mulai dari asal muasal kali ya.
Boleh.
Lahir di kota Medan, grew up di Medan.
Okay.
And then I went to Taiwan to pursue my degree.
Okay.
I have a degree in photonics engineering.
What is that?
So
Sorry,
I got a lot of questions there.
I gotta ask, what is photonic?
Of course, so pretty much whatever that's related with electrical and also lights.
Okay.
That's within my field. Jadi kayak misalnya LCD, FPD, terus LED, terus apalagi ya kayak misalnya fiber optics.
Okay.
So my dissertation was in fiber optics and doing about relay backscattering. So it's a whole another. You need another session for that.
How did you get that? I mean, yeah, okay. All right. That's very interesting already, kan?
Terus. So after I graduated photonics engineering,
Yeah.
I decided to actually work a bit in a semicon industry.
Okay.
Just for a while.
Yeah.
More of like a interning.
In Indo or
Di Singapura.
Okay.
Di Singapura. Terus interning and then a bit, but I feel that I don't want to pursue this for the rest of my career. Then I decided to head back to KPMG, which is kantor papa mama gue.
As a what?
Itu mulainya itu ya karena kantor papa mama gue itu ya.
I see. Got it.
Jadinya itu ya sort of like manager lah.
Yeah.
But mainly I always love technology.
Okay.
So I help to digitize their business processes.
Okay.
Dari dulu itu inventory itu masih pakai catatan, sekarang jadi ada barcode, and all the process kayak misalkan keluarin surat jalan dan segala itu yang dulunya kertas pen and paper sekarang jadi digital.
Okay.
So but mainly I did not build that technology.
Okay.
So utilizing yang products available in the market. Cuman kayak kerja di sana, I feel that I want to do something on my own.
Right.
So I have an itch there.
Yeah.
So I decided to do my first entrepreneur journey.
Okay.
So I built a printing company. Yeah,
Okay.
it's called CES.co.
Okay.
And then, doing that for like several years, I decided to do another, venture again. Itu in digital agency.
Okay.
So it's called Shares Business. And then after that, I have an itch to start a technology startup.
Right.
And that's when I decided to build a wealth tech platform called Bibit.id.
Right.
So I think the motivation there was karena di Indo itu this was back in 2015 ya.
15 ya.
2015 tuh way early, like mainly ini masih hot-hotnya itu e-commerce.
Ya, Tokopedia baru mulai.
Exactly, right? Gojek. Terus ada at the point of time even like Shopee wasn't even like there.
Wasn't even around back then ya.
Yes. Jadi di situ itu kenapa mulainya itu mau investasi pakai duit sendiri itu investasi di Indo itu ternyata sulit.
Yeah.
Like any other novice investor, you would go to the bank. Dan ternyata di bank itu they only serve their preferred clients, di mana lu harus buka rekening with an average balance of 500 juta selama
punya
3
minimal
bulan.
saldo di situ
Then they will appoint a relationship manager buat cater to you. And there's nothing wrong there, right? Karena I do understand mereka itu biasanya paid by commission. Jadi they need to serve the right clients. Terus aku mikir-mikir mungkin this is something that technology can solve. So, karena teknologi at the point of time kayak misalkan Gojek, kayak misalkan Tokopedia itu benar-benar they become a trusted platform agar tidak ada intermediaries. They become the intermediaries themselves, right? So I thought maybe this can be solved with technology. Then I try to understand what's out in the market at that point of time. Itu ada beberapa kompetitor, tapi mainly web portal. Dan itu it felt like as a novice investor it felt like overwhelming karena ngeliatin banyak produk ya itu it feels like a hypermarket of investment products. So I thought kenapa nggak ada yang bikin kayak simple kayak Indomaret atau Alfamaretnya
untuk investment gitu
lah ya. So nggak overwhelming. Then that's how my aha moment started. Dan ya udah, then with a bunch of friends itu ngobrol-ngobrol, kayaknya boleh deh kita coba pursue this. Then that's how Bibit started, and that was the first start of my tech startup journey.
Sampai
Then that was back in 2015. Kita dapat license dari OJK 2016. Then fast forward to 2019, you know, at the point of time, wealth tech wasn't as hot, post-COVID. Jadi, although we were pretty much like was the leading, the mutual funds mobile, tapi in terms of like the market size itu, this is pre-COVID, itu wasn't as big. Jadi emang in terms of fundraising juga very tough, very challenging. Tapi we definitely, the platform has values.
Of course.
And fortunately sih ini ya, kebetulan ketemu teman kayak si Wilson, which is from Stockbit. Jadi we had a really good chat on how we can create a cohesive ecosystem of retail investing for the country. Jadi dari situ itu akhirnya kita decided to be acquired by Stockbit. Dan dari situ tuh udah tuh nggak tahu tuh mau ngapain tuh. Habis exit tuh nggak tahu mau ngapain.
Bikin satu lagi dong, startup dong.
Nah, at the point itu ada itch-nya juga mau bikin sesuatu. So I was really exploring with my options and all. I got to talk to a lot of like VC friends karena di situ itu I've been like doing this for 5 years. Jadi kebetulan ada beberapa teman VC, kita ngobrol-ngobrol. Terus I sort of like bounce back a few ideas. Cuman emang eventually itu ada teman gue itu yang nawarin, kayaknya lu boleh coba ke venture capital deh. Gue tahu ada VC yang lagi looking into. So I thought, why not? Like, because I've never been in this other side of the table. And that's how my VC career started.
Started with Skystar Capital,
Actually, I started with not with Skystar first. I started out with a Chinese VC firm first. It's based in Beijing, but they have a representative. They need a representative in Indonesia. So I started my VC career there first. And they focus more on Series B. So
later stage of
the companies, and I felt very fortunate karena I really get to learn a lot there. And got to see China punya startup, how they hyper grow so fast. Like they have a lot of like business models itu yang emang nggak ada in other part of like. I know that VCs or startups itu usually would take US market like Silicon Valley market right as benchmark. Tapi apparently di China itu their ecosystem is very different, right? They have like super apps, while kayak di Silicon Valley you rarely get to see like super apps, right? Jadi di situ tuh I really got my exposure a lot, like in terms of how the startup scene in China works and other part of APAC works, and I feel that's very relevant to Indonesia. And then I worked there for a bit, and then I moved to Skystar Capital, which is focusing on earlier stage companies. And I felt as a ex-founder myself, I can relate more to like founders that just started, right? I feel that a lot of things that I can guide them, at least I share my experiences, right? So that's how
definitely you can share a bit, one thing or two about how hard it is to become a founder.
Of course, of course. I think being a founder is definitely, I would say you have to be prepared to fail.
Yeah.
You have to have that mentality.
Of course.
Because it's like part and parcel, right, of being a founder. So being resilient is really important.
What do you call it? Like what you need to have as a founder, right?
Exactly.
You gotta be prepared.
Exactly. So I think the challenges is failures.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Failures and being able to accept people calling you crazy.
Yeah.
And this applies to even to your closest circles, your family. Even your, at the point of time, have a girlfriend, all your closest friends would told you that you're crazy, right? But as a founder, or like look at all the great founders in the world, right?
Yeah.
All of them are crazy. They are crazy.
Borderline crazy.
Exactly, right? Because you need to be crazy to have that sort of like mentality kayak gue pasti bisa nih, gue bakal ngelakuin. That's how you make a dent in the industry,
of
right?
Course. Yeah.
Look at ini maybe a few like key role models di startupnya Indonesia ya. Contohnya misalnya William Tanuwijaya yang bener-bener dari jaga warnet doang. Itu kalau mau bikin Tokopedia diketawain nggak? Diketawain. Gue yakin diketawain sih. Imagine the struggles that step-step dari his entrepreneur journey itu yang diledekin orang. Tapi look at how Tokopedia itu sekarang walaupun ini ya. There's another.
But it's already like
exactly.
It's a lot of dent happening in the industries because of that, right?
Of course. Dan mereka itu benar-benar spearhead the tech scene di Indonesia.
That's exactly right.
So I think those are a few challenges ya, yang kalau misalnya jadi startup founder itu, ini despite of all, ini kan ngomongin mental ya, despite of all things ya, lu udah harus prepare, tabungan lu dikuras ya, lu itu udah part of it lah, part of the journey, lu tabungan harus dikuras ketika company lu itu lagi trying to find like the right product market fit, terus lu nggak ada yang mau fundingin, you have to funding yourself, fundraising dari families, itu udah part of it tuh semuanya. Itu tuh challenges tuh itu ya.
Tapi the best thing about being founder is that you can run with your own mission, right?
Yes.
Like I strongly believe lo waktu start Bibit juga you got a mission, right?
Yes.
On why you doing this gitu.
Yes. That's revelating, right? And itu emang penting. Why? Jadi as a venture capital itu my most important question to a founder itu is always what's your motivation starting this? Karena with not the right motivation itu pasti you will stop halfway.
Of course.
Yeah, right? So ini sharing like a bit of my personal experience too. When I started Bibit itu, I was actually a victim of a Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
This was back in like maybe 2012, 2013.
Even someone with your education background and all that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Jadi emang my education background tuh kan engineering ya. So I have no financial literacy at all at that point of time. Jadi gue bener-bener setelah jadi victim itu, my motivation tuh gue nggak pengen orang itu ngerasain apa yang gue rasain. Gue pengen itu orang itu ngerti kayak misalkan investment itu apa, what's the right way to invest, dan becoming a trusted platform. Karena ya at the point of time itu kalau misalnya you remember 2014-15 itu marak banget yang kayak robot trading, bahkan di pas COVID itu juga banyak banget
masih banyak
robot trading.
Bener,
itu
sampai di clampdown sama government baru tuh ya stop kayak gitu ya. Dan so jadi waktu lu nge-start Bibit lu juga salah satu victim of the Ponzi scheme.
Iya, tapi thankfully when I started Bibit itu I've come back in terms of like my mental, karena stress banget kan, lu habisin duit banyak tuh pas lu jadi victim of Ponzi scheme kan. Tapi you start when you want to start a startup or any companies, make sure that you had the best state of your mental health.
Of course.
Baru lu bisa mulai. Kalau nggak nanti your planning itu semuanya kacau karena you were driven mainly by emotion.
Of course.
Takutnya
tapi lu punya misi lumayan strong ya di awal ya, karena lu mau ningkatin financial literacy untuk pengguna bibit ini, jadi supaya mereka kalau mereka mau invest ya lu lakukan dengan aman. Lu dengan menyediakan platform yang terpercaya kayak gitu.
Benar.
Tapi itu challenges-nya apa sih bro pas lagi like in the beginning? Of course you gonna maksudnya kayak pasti bakalan ada challenges, tantangan gitu ya pas lu bikin startup bibit di awal.
Challenges utamanya sih is definitely convincing people that it's a trusted platform. Karena kan kita baru mulai ya.
Benar.
Tapi ya emang it's part of the journey, kayak lu bikin company apapun, bahkan ngomong lah yang lebih I'm not trying to make it easy, tapi ngomonglah kayak misalnya bisnis yang lebih gampang dimengerti, kayak misalnya bisnis skincare. Kalau misalkan lu baru mulai juga belum tentu your customer itu percaya sama your product itu is like best in the market,
bagus,
right? Dan apalagi kayak misalkan lu sebagai founder, lu kalau bilang itu bagus, belum tentu bagus, because you are pretty much like
selling,
kayak it's your baby.
Of course.
Who would say your baby is like
ugly?
Exactly, right? Jadi tantangan tuh utama itu pastinya itu is that gimana bikin orang percaya sama your platform. Tapi it's part of the process. Lu educate the market. When your product is right, the product sells itself.
That's right.
Nah itu yang gue selalu percaya. Why great products itu will sell itself. Dan tantangan kedua pastinya itu is how to convince like investors to invest, karena gamenya itu emang it's a fundraising game. Ini bukan bisnis konvensional yang dimana lu gross profit marginnya sizable, terus lu bisa make with your net profit tuh you keep your company running. Bisnis modelnya itu beda banget. Ini bisnis modelnya yang dimana lu harus create enough traction, baru flywheel-nya kebentuk, baru asset ecosystem itu will run by itself. Jadi it's a platform business. Jadi emang lu butuh fundraising, dan di awal tuh tetap harus bakar, harus berdiri. Jadi that's the second biggest challenge. I think third biggest challenge di awal-awal tuh ngeyakinin tim. Jadi tim juga penting kan, kayak tim itu is pretty much the core of the company. That's the soul. Nah, buat when you face with so many challenges, karena namanya startup, belum ada profit, itu your partners, your team itu semuanya juga akan ada doubts,
of course.
And keeping them sticking together itu juga challenges. Jadi it's pretty much inilah becoming a startup founder itu is not always rainbows.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
So
tapi in the end setelah lu ngejalanin itu semua, looking back, lu ngerasa nggak sih yang lu buat itu ada kontribusinya ke misi lu yang di awal gitu?
Ada. So I think in terms of the positive impact kayak I think Bibit now has like 5 million users. So itu benar-benar udah hampir. I'm not sure. Mungkin in terms of data I'm not sure, but 2023 kalau nggak salah ada 12 juta atau 13 juta investor retail di Indonesia. So 5 jutanya itu kalau dikontribusi dari Bibit maybe like almost half of it. Yeah, almost half of it. Ini ngomongin SID ya. Jadi SID single investor dan gue lupa. Tapi itu identifikasi buat
buat investor
gitu. Jadi itu sih. Jadi I think dampak positifnya itu banyak. Dampak positif banyak.
Dan gue nggak tahu ada cerita kayak positif gitu nggak sih yang karena gue udah teredukasi nih dengan platformnya Bibit gitu. Gue udah nggak lagi kayak ngeliat yang investment yang aneh kayak gitu.
Banyak sih yang kayak begitu. I think yang kalau misalkan yang di luarnya itu produk-produk investment yang janjiinnya itu menggiurkan. Mainly itu harus hati-hati.
If it's too good to be true, probably it is.
Exactly. Jadi there's no free lunch right out there. Jadi kalau kayak begitu harus hati-hati. Jadi biasanya gak biasanya sih, kayak contohnya kayak gua sendiri itu sejak Ponzi scheme, as a Ponzi scheme ex victim itu ya gua nggak pernah lagi mau megang kayak gituan. It's as good as you put your money, itu is as good as mendingan lu taruh duit lu itu di investment yang riskier. Jadi contohnya kayak misalkan di Bitcoin atau saham, itu risky. Tapi at least it's still better than your Ponzi scheme. itu selalu ini ya, it's my principle now. Jadi gue juga ngomong sama temen-temen, kalau misalnya lu daripada lu taruh duit lu itu di Ponzi scheme, mendingan lu taruhnya di Bitcoin. It's as risky dan lu malah lebih riskier itu lu kalau masukin ke Ponzi scheme.
Tapi biasanya kan kalau misalnya if you knew at the beginning it was a Ponzi scheme, you wouldn't get into it, right? Biasanya baru ke reveal kayak berapa lama kemudian kan.
Bener. Cuman kan ini si Ponzi scheme ini ya, main masternya itu pinter ya. They always like package it nicely. They always like package it, entah nanti perusahaan pipa lagi butuh apa, terus nanti dia itu kasih yieldnya 12%, kayak gitu-gitu. It's like too good to be true kind. Jadi karena packagingnya, again, literasi keuangan di Indonesia itu rendah. Jadi orang itu percaya aja. Karena people buy from people. People don't buy from like just paper. Jadi misalkan contohnya, let's say we're good friends, dan gue nawarin lu produk Ponzi scheme, mungkin lu mau,
karena gue percaya sama lu.
Exactly, because people buy from people. Padahal gue sendiri belum tentu ngerti tentang produknya, karena gue juga dengarnya dari temen gue gitu. Jadi it's always like that. Makanya ya harus hati-hati aja sih yang Ponzi scheme. Benar.
Nah, bro, balik lagi ke collabnya Bibit sama Stockbit nih ya. Itu kan jadi kayak match made in heaven ya jadinya ya, karena stronger position for both parties gitu ya. Like how do you see it? Gimana lu ngelihat collab?
I think si Wilson had a great vision. Wilson ini is the founder of Stockbit ya. So when I had a chance to talk to him, itu I felt click lah sama si Wilson. I think dia itu tahu kayak misalkan ngambil Bibit itu dia bakal bawa kemana. Dan I think in terms of like product offering juga lebih comprehensive and lebih kohesif, lebih lengkap buat retail investors. In terms of kayak educating juga lebih gampang ngejelasinnya, kayak misalkan sekarang kan Stockbit itu punya komunitas investor terbesar.
Betul.
Jadi mereka itu kalau misalnya mau ngomongin mutual funds pasti ngomong dong, kalau misalnya sebagai komunitas tuh lu ngomongnya berbagai macam produk investasi kan. Dan mutual funds pasti salah satunya, mutual funds, obligasi, FR itu, terus ORI itu semuanya pasti diomongin. Dan kalau sebagai komunitas tuh lu ngomong itu tapi nggak dijual di Stockbit kan kayaknya ada yang kurang. So I think dampaknya itu positif banget buat retail investor, not just for Stockbit themselves, tapi buat retail investor itu juga milihnya itu, gue kalau misalnya mau ngomongin ada ori yang lagi bagus, teman-teman ngomongin yang lagi bagus, gue tahu gue at least bisa belinya langsung di Bibit gitu. Jadi I think it provides a very holistic platform for all the users of like Stockbit and Bibit.
Dan jadi mereka bisa teredukasi di platform tersebut. Dan langsung eksekusi juga di platform yang sama.
And it goes both ways. Kalau misalnya Bibit yang mutual fund punya investors itu kalau misalkan udah ngerti tentang saham dan mau investasi di saham, mereka bisa ke Stockbit gitu. Jadi it goes both ways gitu.
Nice. Oke. Nah, lu ngelihat di data terakhir itu kan 2020 apa 2022 gue lupa deh. Itu kan financial literacy kita kan stands around 49% tuh data dari OJK gitu kan. Menurut lo hambatan dan itu termasuk yang terendah ya di Southeast Asia ya. Menurut lo hambatan apa sih yang ngebuat kita punya financial literacy itu cukup rendah even di Southeast Asia gitu ya?
Mainly sih karena edukasi ya. Kayaknya edukasi literasi
kurang masif gitu ya.
Kurang masif. Tapi I think government has doing a lot of hard work on that part. Dan makanya juga in terms of growth itu kita at double digit CAGR, right? So in terms of like investors growth double digit CAGR, which is good. Yang kedua itu I feel that emang consumer Indonesia itu mainly consumptive, and there's nothing wrong with that. Karena as a growing country itu emang harus konsumtif juga,
supporting the economy.
Benar,
right?
benar. Jadi kayak misalnya ngeliatin kayak misalnya contohnya Jepang di tahun awal 1990 sampai 2000 itu juga very konsumtif. Korea juga sama. Ya emang it's just part of the process of how a country itu evolves. Jadi tapi karena karena emang behaviornya itu konsumtif, otomatis duit yang buat investment itu juga jauh lebih sedikit. Ya itu biasanya itu yang menurut aku yang kedua. Kalau yang ketiga itu mainly karena nggak ada platform yang mereka tahu itu bisa invest di mana. Jadi akhirnya itu ke bank. Kalau ke bank itu biasanya ini kan deposito, dan deposito although it's still considered an investment, cuman it's not the
probably not one of the best gitu ya.
Exactly. Ya tergantung risk profile sih tergantung risk profile. Tapi ya kalau misalkan ngeliatin returnnya itu jauh beda kalau misalkan you understand how to invest in saham misalkan atau obligasi gitu ya. Jadi ya mainly 3 poin itu sih. 3 poin itu.
Availability. Nah kalau misalnya dari itu kan dari sisi lu waktu sebagai founder tuh ya untuk ngelihat misinya tuh increasing financial literacy. Kalau misalnya Skystar sendiri ini nggak sih care atau ada ngelihat ke arah situ juga nggak sih?
We do care. We do care about like the kita ngomongnya kalau karena visi kita investnya ke teknologi dan itu fintech. Jadi we do care and we see a lot of the traditional financial services itu emang gak bisa cater to this underserved market for many reasons. Karena limitasi mereka itu harus offline, harus face to face, teknologinya belum ada. Jadi we do see an opportunity there. Dan how we take part or how we contribute is investing in fintech companies yang emang serving this underserved market. Jadi we have a company that's doing retail financing namanya Julo, which is doing well. Terus kita juga ada investment ke Paper, which is like helping out facilitating B2B payments. Itu juga bayangin dulu kalau misalnya B2B payment kan harus ngantri ya, kayak orang kalau misalkan B2B payment itu biasanya di set tuh di hari Jumat terus jam sekian baru datang buat ngambil payment gitu. Nah kalau karena everything is offline gitu. Sekarang dengan kayak Paper tinggal issue invoice terus semuanya digital. Jadi orang jadi melek juga terhadap kayak si fintech ini apa tuh gitu. Ini
bisa bayar dengan multiple way of payments gitu ya.
Exactly. Jadi kayak gitu-gitu kita are bullish as a VC ya. Ngomongin juga kayak misalnya Karo, we invest in Karo. Karo itu mainly we provide automotive financing. Jadi automotive financing itu banyak kayak misalkan yang for whatever reasons itu ditolak sama bank. Padahal they have the credit scoringnya itu mencukupi. Jadi karena bank itu nggak ada data secara yang bisa mereka capture secara digital about this profile, makanya mereka bisa nolak. Nah, with Karo, with technology, mereka bisa build that credit scoring secara digital dan mereka jadinya bisa serve this considered safe ini borrowers.
Nah, yang kalau misalnya dia pergi ke bank mungkin ditolak gitu ya.
Benar. Jadi kayak gitu itu we do believe that there's a market for that.
Of course, there's a big opportunity because there's a lot of people yang ke unbank terus nggak bisa dapat kredit dari bank gitu kan.
Benar. Bahkan kayak kita juga ada invest di Komunal, which is a digital BPR. Digital BPR. Jadi BPR itu kan bisa dibilang itu banyak limitasinya. Nah, with digitization jadinya bisa ke unlock banyak potensi-potensi BPR itu akhirnya bisa akses ke bank yang buku 1 gitu. Jadi buku 1, buku 2 gitu. Jadi with technology itu bisa kebuka nih jalur-jalur seperti ini. Exactly.
Good. Nah, kayaknya masa depan fintech nih masih akan terus berkembang nih ya. Dari cerita lo barusan kayaknya masih bakalan kayak nge-unlock so many things di Indo gitu ya. Tapi lo ngelihatnya 5 sampai 10 tahun ke depan tuh bakalan kayak gimana sih?
Menurut gue sih bakal banyak yang breakthrough technologies ya. Karena di Indo itu bahkan kayak blockchain aja belum banyak yang ke-implement. Sekarang AI lagi.
Lebih
cloud computing lagi. Itu semuanya belum ke-implement dengan masif. So I feel there's a lot of opportunities yang bisa dieksplor di situ. Belum banyak juga yang ngerti kayak misalnya how to implement blockchain. Let alone Indonesia ya, kayak Singapura aja lagi figuring out gitu. Iya, jadi I feel that there's still a lot of opportunities in this space. Yang ke-capture digitally itu juga less than 25% of the transaction available like in the country. Jadi
on daily basis itu cuman segitu
ya capture. Jadi kecil banget. Ngomong aja kayak misalnya kayak QRIS itu di China kan udah like 80% something itu udah pakai digital payment ya.
Mobile payment kayak
exactly.
gitu ya.
Di Indo itu kayaknya less than 10%. Jadi jadi in terms of like opportunities they are still like huge. So we are still a big believer in fintech.
Okay. So everyone yang lagi startup founder yang di fintech space, tolong.
Jangan lupa
pitch deck. Silakan send your pitch deck to Juve.
Happily accepted.
Nah, gue pengen tahu nih ya, balik lagi kalau lu sebagai VC dan ex-founder juga gitu. Definisi PMF ini kan kayak holy grail-nya startup founder tuh kan PMF gitu ya. PMF, lu mesti cari PMF nih di early stage gitu. Indikatornya waktu di Bibit tuh kayak gimana, bro? Lu tahu ini produk tuh PMF kayak gitu.
Maybe I will talk in general manner.
Sure.
Jadi karena nggak hanya di Bibit, semua startup atau semua company, bahkan company tradisional pun PMF itu juga penting. Misalkan lah saya ngomongin kita penjual pisang goreng, right? PMF itu bisa didefinisikan di beberapa hal. Yang pertama itu, is there orang ngantri nggak buat produk lu? Kalau orang ngantri itu bisa di PMF nomor 1. Nomor 2, setelah mereka beli balik nggak?
Repeat.
Ya, repeat kan. Itu namanya retention. Kan? Retention. Startup jargonnya itu retention. Tapi it's just like repeat customers gitu kan. Yang ketiga itu ketika mereka repeat, mereka bayar nggak? Jadi gross profit margin lu berapa? Karena gross profit margin is the right definition of the value that you creating. Semakin tinggi margin lu dan semakin willing your customer pays, means that what you provide itu valuable for them. Karena mereka rela bayar margin segede itu, despite of other competitors itu banting harga.
Benar.
Right? Nah, biasanya these 3 things will consider that you build the right product market fit. Jadi nggak hanya di startup ya. Ngomongin jual pisang goreng juga sama.
Bisa juga kayak gitu ya. Orang yang pertama mereka ngantri apa enggak gitu ya. Terus yang kedua mereka repeat order atau retentionnya balik lagi apa enggak. Yang ketiga mereka bayar apa enggak.
Gitu rela bayar margin
lu apa enggak. Oke, that's a good way. Nah, sekarang pertanyaan the nextnya, cara mencapai PMF-nya itu seperti apa, bro?
Wah, harus A/B testing.
Selalu ya.
Selalu A/B testing. A/B testing. I think there's no other words from that. Gak ada kata yang lebih baik daripada A/B testing. So, cuman A/B testing itu kan you have to have a structure to do A/B testing. Yang pertama itu pasti that you should define your first niche. Jadi niche kamu itu siapa? Misalkan contoh kita ngomong lah kayak you are targeting MSMEs, tapi MSME banyak. Vertikalnya apa? Niche itu yang mana? Exactly, niche itu apa? Karena MSME misalkan ngomongin lah kayak misalkan software akuntansi. How you book a F&B business, how an F&B business itu book their accounting versus how financial services book their accounting itu, although fundamentalnya sama, tapi pasti ada beda-bedanya dikit.
Cara pencatatannya.
Exactly. Jadi building produknya itu juga harus berbeda. Nah, understand your niche first. Habis itu ya lu ngelakuin A/B testing. Yang kedua itu untuk mencapai product market fit. Other than that ya you make sure that your product itu nggak ada lag time. Kayak misalkan nggak ada macet-macetnya lah. Jadi tadi kan customer udah ngantri nih. Can you fulfill all those orders,
demands ya?
Exactly. So product market fit itu nggak hanya tentang produk. Itu juga on how you make sure your kitchen is prepared to scale that product gitu. Karena let's say ya, misalkan contoh lu ngomongin product market fit, lu produknya itu orang suka, tapi you can't make enough, you can't fulfill the demand. Itu means that in your kitchen itu belum product market fit. You have to make sure that dua-dua side-nya itu product market fit. Karena product market fit, next phase after product market fit is making sure that you can scale. Kalau misalkan lu ketemu produk, dapur lu itu belum bisa scale, means that you haven't found your product market fit.
Jadi it's both side dari demand sama supply-nya juga mesti capable untuk.
Yes. That's how I define the product market fit.
Oke. Berarti tadi lu bilang pas PMF itu penting sebelum lu bisa scaling gitu ya. Dari sisi founder startupnya sendiri tuh skillnya mereka mesti beda gitu ya, antara pada saat mereka ngejalanin starting up dengan pada saat mereka scaling gitu. Itu skillsnya mesti beda tuh.
Yes, karena aku juga percaya kayak ini ya, founder itu kan grow. Atau as a human you grow. Nggak hanya founder lah, lu kerja dimanapun juga lu pasti grow. Lu pasti grow. Nah, ketika awal mulai skill set yang ini menurut saya yang penting itu is pastinya visi misi. Visi misi itu lu harus define jelas. Kalau enggak, you just don't know where to go, where you're heading. Yang kedua itu you make sure that your team itu solid. Dari itu you have to build culture.
That's right.
And culture is crucial karena your culture itu is for long term. Jadi and people are pretty much like your peers, itu will look up to you as a founder.
Of course.
Jadi kalau misalkan how you treat them, how you create a company culture, itu will stick for long. Right? Dan yang ketiga skill set yang paling penting itu is definitely on resilient. Nggak mau nyerah.
Lo itu udah ditolak sama visi berapa kali gitu, ya. Apa namanya produknya bagi sana bagi sini gitu ya. Tetap aja.
Dan A/B testing juga jangan pernah nyerah kan. Jadi 3 hal ini yang menurut aku paling penting ketika you're trying to build a product market fit. And when scaling, I think the skill set has to be different too. Jadi when you scale, you need to learn how to delegate things. Delegating is really important karena as a founder, ketika when you're at scaling, you need to become an evangelist. So you become the face of the company. Tapi and you share your pretty much you impart your wisdom and vision to your team for them to execute. So you're not an executor anymore. This is when you're scaling. So what you do, you become the face of the company, you evangelist, you pretty much fundraising, you need to have a great negotiation skills, you do business partnerships here and there, karena again, your mindset itu is to scale. To scale and how to grow the company itu in a multiple manner, jadi exponentially. So those are the skill sets that you should grow when ketika lu udah tahu ini udah ketemu product market fit dan gua udah harus scale, skill set yang gua harus bagusin itu di sini.
Okay. So it's definitely beda pada saat lo starting up dan pada saat lo scaling. Tapi yang lo lihat founders itu meant to be growing anyway gitu to that roles gitu.
Yes.
Jadi kalau misalkan dari kayak lu dari founder ke VC gitu kan sekarang kan. Let's talk about your personal experience gitu. Ada ininya nggak sih? Ada like how was it pas lu lagi transisi dari founder ke VC?
I think
was it an easy?
I wouldn't say easy karena it's a very different skill sets that you have to have, right? Although I would say that it's sering kedengaran ya, kayak misalkan founder jadi VC atau VC jadi founder. Itu karena industrinya itu dekat gitu. Jadi interchangeably. Cuman emang skill setnya itu beda banget sih. Kayak misalkan sebagai VC, you need to see a lot of things. and you need to have macro economy or macro knowledge. Beda dengan sebagai founder. Kalau founder itu you have to be really laser focused on what you're building dan lu pokoknya tahu tentang industri lu aja. Gak perlu tahu industri yang lain. So it's very different and I wouldn't say it's as easy as flipping your hand. Tapi a lot of like adapting that need to be done. Karena dulu yang guanya fokus. Sekarang gue harus ngeliatin semua itu secara general dan gue harus ngeliatin itu a lot of things lah, kayak misalkan lu harus bisa tahu kalau foundernya itu emang motivasinya benar. Nah itu biasa kalau as a founder fokusnya kan business partnerships. Pokoknya ada partnerships, datang gue open, gue ngobrol dan kalau emang cocok gue partner gitu.
Of course.
Kayak gitu ya. Jadi I think it's different sih. It's different, tapi I wouldn't say it's easy.
The switch wasn't easy.
The switch wasn't easy.
Tapi dengan lu pernah jadi founder, lu pasti pas ngelihat founder-founder yang lain, lu bisa kind of like a sense gitu ya. Okay, this guy has the right motivation, has the right mission, has the right skills and all that, kayak gitu. Would that make it your job as a VC easier?
I would say yes and no. Yes, karena I can relate kalau misalnya ketemu emang motivasinya bener, I can relate. Tapi kalau ngeliatin satu deal yang kita mau invest, itu kan nggak hanya founder ya. Jadi we see a lot of things too. We see like the team composition. We also see like the business model, how they will monetize
how
in the future.
How big is the market gitu ya.
How big is the market. Jadi gak selalu pakai kacamata founder aja udah bisa gitu. It helps, yes, but not always. Not always.
Okay. Karena kayak tadi lu bilang lu sebagai VC sekarang udah lebih broad general, looking at things on a lebih besar kayak gitu ya. Yes. Kalau misalnya branding tuh perlu gak sih bro dari personal branding ya dari untuk founder dan untuk jadi VC gitu?
I would say yes, tapi in a positive way ya. In a positive way. Kayak banyak kan, kayak misalkan kita ngeliatin influencer yang kemarin sempat kena kasus ya, di mana mereka itu showing off their wealth, terus embel-embelnya itu dia pinter trading gitu ya. Nah itu personal branding yang menurut aku salah. Tapi kita juga bisa ngeliatin banyak personal branding yang works out well for them. Karena sebagai any human beings, you need to sell yourself.
That's true. Regardless jobs or work that you're doing.
Exactly. You need to have some sort of reputation agar people willing to partner with you.
Of course.
Nah, gue mungkin kasih contoh yang lebih out of the yang nggak di Indo lah ya, kayak misalnya Elon Musk. Gue percaya dia ada personal brandingnya, dan personal brandingnya ya benar karena dia nggak trying to fake it. Ya dia emang ada gitu, dia emang ada kalibernya gitu. Tapi ya jangan sampai you fake it till you make it. Nah, I'm not a big believer of fake it till you make it. Gue percaya yang kayak model yang gue branding, misalkan as a VC ya, I have a genuine heart. Yang gue mau branding itu adalah I really want to make an impact in the tech industry dan gue itu mau partner with the right entrepreneurs. So that's, and I'm willing to handhold bareng-barengan nih kita. Even like when you're struggling itu gue juga di sebelah lu gitu. Jadi that's part of like my branding to founders gitu. Nah itu penting, and because that also opens up other founders buat willing to partner with us.
Of course.
Gitu.
Jadi you basically attracting the same kayak yang punya
wavelength yang sama. Exactly.
So you're looking for more because you've done this. You had a mission before. So you're looking for kayak more like missionary founders rather than opportunist founders.
Exactly.
Cool. Nah, ini yang kita sekarang temukan sekarang nih funding lagi sulit banget nih bro, ya kan? Nah, nggak kayak tahun 2021, 2022 gitu ya. Like gimana ya? Jadi ada saran nggak ya kalau buat yang startup founder kita yang lagi dengerin gitu ya? What's your thought on this gitu?
Justru ketika funding lagi seret ya kayak sekarang ya, great companies are usually born.
True.
Yes.
I can name a few.
Yeah, right?
Airbnb, Amazon.
Bener. Kayak contohnya misalkan kayak Tencent, Alibaba was somewhere in 1998 juga, right?
During that crisis.
Exactly. Yep. Kayak Amazon, .com bubble, right?
Bubbles, yeah.
Microsoft, when oil price crashes, right, was born. So all great companies too usually are born during tough times.
Yep.
Karena that is when you are tested as a founder, and you are, if without any proper funding, you can make it. Means that again you have found the right product market fit. Your product market fit itu emang di value sama customers. Makanya people without you subsidizing in the market itu orang mau bayar. Sama halnya juga dengan Tokopedia sama Gojek. They were rightly born itu di 2008 after GFC kan, Global Financial Crisis kan. Jadi emang kayak begitu. I think great startups itu justru harus mulainya itu ketika fundingnya seret. Iya, karena ketika lu bener-bener di funding, itu is a validation of yourself. Kalau misalnya investor, karena ketika capital crunch, we only have like this portion to invest. We are very cherry picking in the market. Nah, kalau misalkan lu di-invest, you should feel somewhat comfortable at heart that what you're building itu kayaknya bener nih, gitu. Cuman jangan lose focus aja ketika lu dapat funding ya. Lu harus bisa appreciate, karena itu valuable. Benar. You got that funding itu di saat market sulit. Jadi you just use that capital to as efficient as possible to build the right product. Nah, jadi kalau saran-saran gue ke other founders di saat-saat ini sih, jangan nyerah. If you believe what you're building is right, keep building it. Then it's the right time to build any companies at this time.
Going back to the mission, if you have the mission,
exactly.
Whatever it is, you still can work it out. Gitu ya.
Touche to that.
Bro, thank you banget loh udah datang ke sini. It's very nice to talk to you today. Well, best of luck and thank you very much.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you.